a very delicate and tricky balance, right? We want people to connect with nature, but then we have to take into account how many people there are on the planet. How do you mitigate the fact that all these people then want to go to these wild spaces to see them and experience them, because everyone should have the right to experience these amazing wild places, but how do you mitigate the impact of that when it happens?
Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast, a Modern Huntsman production. I am your host, Byron Pace, and this is episode 207. You are listening to the Living with Nature series presented by Swarovski Optik, where we ask our guests 5 questions about how they connect with nature. One of the ways many people do connect with nature is simply by observing, and as I learnt from a very young age, to do this you need good glass and good optics. For a full range of spotting scopes and binoculars, head over to SwarovskiOptik.com. I'll also stick a link in the description for the binoculars that I have been using for the last 2 years, which is the CL Companions in 8x30. And if you want to hear this series from the beginning, head back to episode 107 with Ben Lisdus from Swarovski Optik to hear about the premise of the series and what listeners can expect. In this episode, I chat with friend and a woman of many talents, Sarah Roberts. She is a children's writer, a TV presenter, an environmental journalist, and has an incredible article coming out in the next volume of Modern Huntsman all about sharks, which is due in the first half of 2022. So keep your eyes up for that and visit modernhuntsman.com for more information. But before we get to her world of living with nature, a shout out to the top tier Patreon supporters for this month, who include Richard McNeil, Ronnie Speakman of RD Contracting, James Marchington, the guys at South Ayrshire Stalking, Thomas Cameron, Mark Zabrowski, and Colin Knight. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Byron Pace. And if you have any suggestions for guests, or there's a particular series format that you have enjoyed, please let me know. Email info@paceproductionsuk.com. You can also follow what I am up to over on pretty much all the socials at Byron J. Pace. Sarah, welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. Well, welcome back to the Into the Wilderness podcast. But this is your first time on the Living with Nature series. How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I'm probably sound a little bit chesty compared to usual because of the change in seasons and the illnesses that brings. But yeah, apart from
at least
that,
you've not got hay fever yet.
It's on its way, isn't it? It's on its way.
Now we can't talk too much about this because it's in an upcoming. It's going to be in an upcoming Modern Huntsman story. But I'm down here with you, actually doing an in-person podcast with you for the first time because we've been shooting some stuff. You've been in the water surfing for the last couple of days.
It's all your fault that I sound hoarse, actually.
Well, yeah. I got on a surfboard for the first time.
You did. And your first time in the southwest of the country, which shocks me massively.
I know. Well, it takes a lot to get me south of Hadrian's Wall.
Flipping out. Well, I pulled out the big guns for you, didn't I? So hopefully we'll get you back.
It's been stunning. And I can't wait to come back and not necessarily be working and just come and learn to surf more.
Yeah, barbecue, surf, sun.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
Which is all actually, I suppose, in some ways that doesn't answer the first question of this podcast series, but it is one of the ways that you connect with nature. So let's fire into the first question, which is how do you connect with nature on a regular basis?
So I actually still refer to it in the same way as I did as a kid, but generally playing out, I think.
Playing out? Is that the general term that you use for being outside the front door?
No. So for me, that would include a little bit of a hit of newness, as we were saying.
Yep.
So
why newness?
Why newness? Because I think you are more aware of your surroundings. You make greater memories with that. You are put outside of your comfort zone, and then you are hyper aware of the place and what's going on and the animals that are living there. And I think also it gives you a greater appreciation of the wildlife, the ecosystems, and
so seek out new experiences.
The fun that you can have there. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So everything from we explored an old mine a while back. Getting out on the water at Celtic Deep, going swimming with sharks or whales if you're as lucky as we were. You know, just
And that's in this country, isn't
that's
it?
in this country.
Can you believe that?
I know, scuba diving, free diving. But do you know what? On a more general basis, aside from all of that and, you know, surfing bits and bats, probably the most regular way is probably walking the dog, or will be very, very soon, I think.
Well, this has your new addition to the household has taken up quite a lot of time in the last 2 days. He's sitting there. We can see him right now. He's sitting outside the back door.
He's observing.
What have you got?
A Tamascan puppy. So he's a little mini wolf who's busily chewing up the house.
Your door.
Yeah, literally chewing up the house. He's no idea how exciting his life is about to get.
But it's interesting you say that, because you do a lot of very cool things. But that is obviously something that's quite consistent in your life, and it's accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, not everybody has a dog, but the point is that you're walking in nature. The reason for being for you in this instance is the fact you're taking a dog for a walk.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything that I do and get the most enjoyment out of is free. You know, just getting in the sea, or hiking up a mountain, or going for a skate, going for a surf. All of the best things in life are free, aren't they? But you know, if you can incorporate just being a little bit more aware, listening to the bird songs, listening to looking at the tracks and the signs as you go, then you get even more out of those experiences than you would before. So, best things in life are free, hey?
So, to the second question, do you have a good example of how companies, or people, in fact, are helping rebuild this bridge or the connection with nature? We can talk continually about how people are disconnected with nature, and I know it's actually quite a lot of the work that you do.
Yeah. So I run a sort of an outreach project, and we work with predominantly schools and students and pupils, but we do some corporate work too. And all of that is so it's called Creature, and it's all about connecting people with big environmental issues and nature. And
Did that spin off your kids' books? Is that how that developed?
the kids' books spun off Creature.
Oh, it's the other way around.
Yeah, so I had trained in environmental outreach. I'd trained as an education officer while I was at uni, because I worked at a local zoo to help pay off the fees, and that gave me a real insight as to how storytelling, particularly, can be such a useful tool when it comes to engaging people in environmental topics, or engaging them with wildlife or facts, anything that you wouldn't necessarily absorb or remember for quite a long time. If you can get a story around it, then it sticks in people's brains better. So yeah, the kids' books came at a time when I just set up Creature in about 2013, 2014, and I was going into schools and I was looking for a way of connecting kids to plastic pollution and climate
reasons
change
to care and make a positive impact on the planet.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm still going with Creature, and it's sort of grown from that. And as per your question, in terms of one of the companies that I think are doing some great stuff, we've just partnered with Mossy Earth, who I don't know whether you've heard of, but they're amazing. They do carbon offsetting, which is why we work with them for our climate action events with schools. But they go a bit further, and in terms of actually engaging their pupils in the schools that work with them, they they can plant trees, but they also help in rewilding projects. They provide funding for other projects that, you know how hard it is in the science world to get funding for important conservation, getting tags, getting anything like that. So they do a whole spectrum of things.
So it's not just the easy option, which you often see, and it really puts me off, because I sometimes feel like, are these funds really doing
anything?
Are they, anything, or are they potentially doing more damage than the good? Because it's not just about planting trees for carbon sequestration. It's also what is the environmental impact of that? What land is it being used on? How does it change that ecosystem? But this example that
100%.
you're giving this is a holistic approach.
Yeah. And as I said, it's not just trees. They also do things like, for example, for the World Surfing League, they offset one of those big events by creating a kelp forest.
Okay.
So like helping, they work with locals, and they also use local native species when they do it, and they plan their projects out carefully between what is, the need for it at that time. But we're working with them with our schools, and they go above and beyond, because what they do is they provide updates for the school. So any school that they work with us on, they'll go back to the school and say, look, here's a photo of the trees that have been planted.
Okay.
And then a few months later, here's the growth from a drone video, and here's a walkthrough video. And then should any of the schools want to actually go and visit the projects, it's possible. So it takes it
just tangible, rather than just, we did it.
Yeah, ticking the box, that's been offset. It becomes an entire project that the school can then spin out from. And they're great. As I said, I'm using schools as an example because that's who at the moment we are doing these events for, but we are also doing corporate events, and they work with loads of companies too, which I think is so important. We are moving into a world where carbon neutral and carbon negative are such key words and very, very important aspects, and I think it's so important that you do the research to know who you're partnering with to, offset that carbon. And if it, like you say, is it actually going to do more damage than good? Is it going to do, because I also think there needs to be a lot more focus on the soils too at some point.
Yeah, that's a big I'm still it's a podcast that I've been meaning to try and arrange for a long time, is to speak to soil scientists. I've covered a little bit with regenerative grazing, but just to do, which maybe from the outside, that's going to be incredibly dull. A podcast on soils, but actually there's a whole other world below the surface.
I've always wanted to do some. I can't say too much, but one of the future books I think is, if it gets over the line anytime soon, hopefully is going to cover something on that. Yeah.
Keep your eye out.
Hey.
So, next question. Is there a conservation story happening right now that you are particularly passionate about? You're very passionate about a lot of things. I know from spending time with you, but is there something in particular that you can
things
pull
that
out?
I'd really love to go and cover? Yeah, there is. I'm generally attracted to the slightly more controversial areas. Two things. No,
I'd never guessed that.
No.
That's why we're down. That's why I'm down here.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested with that sort of crossover of where social media affects the wild spaces that we have around the world, and specifically certain species as well. Because obviously we are exposed now to so much more in terms of people interacting with animals, and that can be...
You mean like physical interaction?
Yeah, like... So obviously having a background in sort of animal behaviour and animal welfare, I'll think a bit deeper into when I see somebody, for example, a diver on a video who's found a little octopus and they're...
And now this has happened a lot recently, hasn't it? And it is an amazing documentary and a really stunningly beautiful story, but My Octopus Teacher, which everyone should go watch if they haven't seen it.
Yes.
But recently that has been a catalyst for exactly what you're talking about.
100%. And of course in the world of shark diving, you see it all the time. People wanting to touch a shark, grab a fin,
So why is this a problem?
Well, all of these things can be very detrimental to the animals themselves that are involved. And that's an education awareness thing that needs to get out there more. A lot of animal interactions, especially with wild animals, where you're interfering with the behavior, you can be causing stress, you can be actually having a physical impact on them. Should you take something out the water, or should you really sort of mess with its behavior? But then you have the problem with social media, with everything is sort of exasperated, because that one clip that maybe for some people would be, like a biologist, for example, might see it and sort of think, oh God, that's the worst thing ever. For anybody on the outside that doesn't understand what they're seeing, that then can go totally viral because of, unfortunately, the way of our algorithms and the internet, before you have the opportunity to actually explain that this isn't good or this shouldn't be happening. And it comes back down to my favourite quote, but the emptiest boxes make the loudest rattles. And unfortunately, it's very hard for people that have maybe a lot more knowledge in terms of the science world, but they're not natural communicators because they're not dedicating all their time to a social media platform. So their voices get, washed away, unfortunately, by people with lesser knowledge, and that can have a real negative impact. I mean, we see it all the time as well with ecotourism. I mean, you yourself, you must have spent some time, watching certain migrations around Africa. And apparently, if you turn the camera around at certain points, you'd be shocked at the amount of people and,
Yeah, I mean,
tourism.
it has changed the behavior of a lot of the animals in those
Yeah,
places.
in so many places around the world. So that's always something that I would love to go out and make something on that particular topic. I know there's a host of specific stories which I won't go into because I don't want to give them away. But yeah, it's always something I got one eye on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it because we are there. You read a lot about. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of a lot of these questions is trying to make people understand and reconnect with a nature in a society that really has disassociated itself with it, because we live mostly in urban areas. But here is an instance where it's kind of gone too far, because it's not about that kind of interaction. It's about appreciating wild animals in wild spaces and the environment around, but not screwing with the animals and how they would behave if we weren't there.
Well, it's a very,
in an unnecessary way.
A very delicate and tricky balance, right? Yeah. We want people to connect with nature, but then we have to take into account how many people there are on the planet. How do you mitigate the fact that all these people then want to go to these wild spaces to see them and experience them, because everyone should have the right to experience these amazing wild places, but how do you mitigate the impact of that when it happens? And how do you protect certain places for the animals? Because in order to, create this amazing connection between nature and people want to see nature. We are monkey see, monkey do. We want to touch it. We want to get close to it. And as we've just said, like, that can have a big impact on the animals themselves. Even just like you can see it going through like somewhere like Yellowstone or anywhere where it takes one or two people that just want to get that shot. They want that animal a bit closer, then they go and put some food down, and then that's going to affect it. And then
it happened, it happened in the last 18 months. It happened with I won't name him, but a really famous photographer got caught doing that. I think it was in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And he was feeding coyotes, I think, with clients.
Yeah.
On like photography workshops, and that actually happens. I think if the public understood the true extent of how, particularly photographers, it has to be said, like wildlife photographers, and this is obviously a very broad statement, but they, not as a group of people, but in terms of the people doing it for reasons and commercial reasons, manipulate wildlife to get what they want,
100%.
they would be utterly shocked.
Yeah.
If they really understood the extent of it.
I mean, there's terrible things if you really delve into the world of social media and some of these viral videos. I mean, even if you get yourself caught on reels, unfortunately, you can flick through and it doesn't take long before you actually see some sort of animal abuse going through it. And from the outside in, you maybe wouldn't consider it to be, but then when you start questioning, well, why is this animal stuck on top of this other animal? Because there's even issues with, in certain parts of the world where they are, taking things and gluing them on top of other things, like frogs on top of snakes. And
this is news to me. I didn't know this.
Yeah, it is quite extreme. All for the shot and for
the picture. And
yes.
Because it looks like, how on earth did that happen?
Absolutely. So I'd love to.
So I guess the moral of that story is, if you're looking at that stuff, just maybe think a little deeper about what you're looking at.
I often find myself, because of the algorithm, I mean, we're so controlled by AI without even realizing it. But these things, you find yourself liking one picture of a cool interaction in a national park, or there's a really cute lion club. Didn't mean to, but you spend a little bit longer on, and it's got you.
I know about the real hole. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And I find myself sometimes when I come across these reels, because what you're often looking at is something that's been shared so many times. You're not even looking at the original source. It's gone far bigger on other platforms that just exist to promote and share these things even further.
Yeah.
So then I find myself looking through the comment, just kind of baffled as to how many people are too busy like, oh, this is so cute. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, I want one. Oh, I need this. I want that. It takes a while. It's a very small percentage that are like, this is wrong. You get so far down before you find somebody else that's sort of flagged, that's not natural. This shouldn't happen. This is probably a cause for concern. But yeah, I mean, animal behaviourist, right? People are just animals to me. So then that's like a whole extra study.
People watching is fun.
Yes.
I'm talking of people. Is there a person who particularly, or a person or people who particularly inspire you in your line of work and the things that you're enthused and interested
so
in?
many, you included.
Don't, Sarah, you're gonna make me
No,
blush. I'm already
serious.
red. I'm already red from the sun yesterday. I got burnt.
Factor
the English
50,
sun.
Factor 50, Byron. It's not even summer yet. Yeah, I'm not really one of those people that sort of follows celebrities or follows big names, but I do really passionately believe in the work that my friends are doing, and that I meet lots of people through my friends, and that that network of people expands. I'm quite an inquisitive person, so if my friends sort of let on that they know of a study or something, I want to know 100 questions about it. And yeah, I think within my friendship group, there's so many people that are inspiring me for so many different reasons. I guess just to give you an example, Hannah Rutson, or Hannah Med, you may know her as, who is the founder of American Shark Conservancy out in Florida. I've known Hannah for years, and she, against all odds, is working on a project with fishermen. So she basically goes out with great hammerhead fishermen who catch sharks for recreational catch and release. Totally legal in Florida, happens all the time. It probably isn't going to go away anytime soon. So accepting that, she's a scientist and wants to get data from that information to find out, is there a way to do it better? Is there a way that you can ensure that the shark survives and thrives afterwards? Is there a different kit you can be using? Is there, and all of her work goes then to the policymakers directly and has a proper effect.
But in collaboration with the fishermen.
In collaboration with the fishermen, because the fishermen, despite what anyone might think, don't actually want the sharks to die. That is not the point of what they're doing, and that means if they do, they can't continue doing the sport that they love doing. So they've been really great working with her. But in the first place, it was an industry that was under a huge amount of fire. It always is occasionally, depending on what practice. There's bad practice, and that happens. But Hannah got a lot of criticism from people within the science world, from shark divers. Why would you work with these people? Why would you help these people? Why are you going over to the dark side? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Which is madness, because it is one of those situations that's actually so necessary. It isn't going away anywhere. Once you accept that industry is happening, until it gets banned, if it gets banned, should it get banned? Should it get banned? All
because
of these are based on opinions.
That relationship will then facilitate other science for the conservation of these species.
This is it. So for Hannah, the first thing was always catch and release mortality. And I should admit, I should also point out another reason she inspires me is because Hannah's not partnered with any university. It's totally independent study, which they've had to apply for grants and funding. And it's a very small pot, to go around for grants and funding for any kind of biological field work. And they managed to get these sat tags out there all on their own, with so much hard work, so many nights sleeping out on a beach with the fishermen, trying to build those trusting relationships to allow them. Essentially, all they do is the fishermen, when they go about their normal day to day, they'll call Hannah and let her know now, because she's got a good relationship with them. If they're fishing, she'll rush down to the beach. If they catch anything, as they're getting the hooks out and doing whatever they need to do, she'll rush in, get a sat tag on the shark, and that will pop off after 2 weeks, I think it is. If the shark's fine and swims off. If anything happens and the shark sinks, it pops off earlier, and that gives them information which can then be used to feed back to the fishermen for the fishermen to clean up shop in house if anything needs to happen, or can just be really, really useful for learning more about the shark ecology and behavior, and if if they are at threat. And so once they, it's also skills and knowledge that you wouldn't want to be wasted, right? The fishermen have
Because
so much.
how would the how would the scientists interact and tag and track sharks to work that out if they didn't have the vehicle to actually capture the sharks in the first place, which is the fishermen? How does that work?
This is the thing. So under the guise of science, if scientists, for the most part, needed to set any tags, they're going to be fishing for the sharks anyway.
Yeah. But they don't have decades of.
They don't have
experience doing it.
Decades. It's not even decades. It's hours every year. You have to find funding to get on that boat. You have to find funding for the skippers. You have to find funding for the tags. You have to write all of that up. I mean, you yourself know there's only so many days you can dedicate to field work.
Yep.
Whereas fishermen, this is their life. This is where they spend their time. This is where they excel, and it's something they love doing. It's something that they've been doing for years and years. It's gone down generations. So that wealth of knowledge, skill set, equipment, paired nicely with scientists and people that can then pair that with policymakers and conservationists, even feeding right back to the people who maybe don't particularly like any of it but really care about the species, because it can add to that knowledge base. I think I always am inspired by Hannah, because she's been somewhat of an underdog to begin with. She didn't have this huge funding, this huge reputation in the science world, which quite often, a lot of people within the shark world that do particularly well have had those lucky breaks either on TV, or have those lucky contacts that have a big pocket of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great to see people exceed and persevere even when they have, not much to start with in the beginning. And they're still coming up against a lot of controversy and a lot of negative attention, and they're still doing it because they passionately believe what they're doing is useful and helpful. And I think that's really inspiring for me. It's about the bigger picture.
Surround yourself with people who inspire you.
Absolutely.
Which you seem to have done.
I try my best.
So to the last question, which is there a particular interaction with nature that you've had in your life so far that really stands out, that blew you away?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. For me, it's always the ones that are unpredictable, the ones that you didn't see coming.
Yep.
Because you can go out and spend ages planning a trip trying to see something very specific behavioral wise and never get to see it, or see a specific species, and you might see it but it ends up not being the main thing about the trip. So for me, I was working as a grizzly bear guide out in Canada. It was quite near the start of the season. I'd done all my training, and just before the guests were going to arrive, we went for a barbecue, basically on a rock. Because it's a bit difficult to do any sort of barbecue braai thing, inland in grizzly bear territory. It's not quite where you want to be cooking all your meat. So it was
you might invite uninvited guests for lunch.
Yeah, you don't. Well, it's also the leftovers, and the rest of it all becomes quite tricky, just to leave no trace and not have any risk there. So we went to this. It's like a little island rock in the middle of the inlet where we were, set up there, set a little fire going, had our sausages on a stick. We're all enjoying, the start of the season, everything to come. We were about to watch an amazing sunset. Lo and behold, a fin appears right in front of us, then another fin and another fin, these huge black dorsal fins with white patches on, and this amazing pod of orca appeared.
Wow, how far from you?
I think at the closest, probably about 15, 20 meters.
Whoa, that
Yeah,
close?
yeah.
Oh, that's
Came to check out
insane.
what was going on, and they lingered in the area. They had 2 younger calves there,
Oh,
and they were
amazing.
like fully breaching.
I've never seen them.
Have you not?
No.
Oh,
We get them occasionally off the coast of Scotland, but I've never seen them.
yeah. I mean, they're so elusive, right? So for us to have them there for probably about an hour at least, just
Magical.
feeding in front of us and then like fully breaching, doing all the behaviours that the SeaWorld trainers really are trying to train them up to do. They were just naturally doing it. They were just playing, you know, all the little calves jumping out and then their tail slaps and their fin slaps swimming around on the back. They were in a whale of a time, these giant dolphins. But no, it was amazing, and it was totally unexpected, and it was already, you know, one of those moments where you're fully appreciating your surroundings, you're appreciating nature, you're content with a lovely
It's like
sunset.
nowhere else in the world you'd want to be at that moment in time.
100%, and probably no barbecue that I'll ever go to that will top
it,
that.
yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Still young, but it's a high bar. It's
very
set a
high
very
bar,
high
yeah.
bar. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's incredible. That's going to top a lot of experiences.
We've got to hunt some down in Scotland, haven't we? At some point. That and the basking shark.
Well, I think basking sharks is infinitely easier to do. I think.
Yeah.
To go and swim around with some basking sharks and
and
I also don't really want to swim. I don't want to swim with orcas.
Me not so much either.
I know.
Actually, to be honest,
lots of people do, but I've
got some reserves.
Yeah, so do I. I've watched them eat seals.
Yeah. I don't want to be on that. And it's not even so much about the eating. It's more just like I don't bounce very well if I get thrown in the air, you know.
Actually, I saw some footage. We were talking about it the other day, and I think something that came up when I was looking at an Instagram reel, probably 12 hours after we were talking about it, was an orca eating shark.
Oh, really? Yes. Yeah.
So, and you realize, because it was a great white, and I think it was, and you realize how big an orca is.
They're enormous.
When you see the shark sideways in its mouth, you're like, that shark looks tiny, and I know that it's not.
To me, like, a great white shark is the elite of the ocean.
Yeah.
They cannot be better adapted to that environment. You know, they are one of the top apex predators, and they stand no chance whatsoever by these orca. I mean, there's a port and starboard, who I think we were chatting about, the ones in South Africa. Literally just drive them into the shallows, grab their pectoral fin, throw them over, make a little slit in the side of them, and then sup up all that squalene out their liver and swim off, you know. And that massive 5-meter great white shark stands no chance whatsoever. What odds do you think we have wearing our wetsuit and our fleshy little bodies? As you know, we know that we scratch very easily.
Yeah.
You know, if you walk past a thorn bush and that's broken our skin. So yeah.
They are remarkable, and I would love to spend some time. Would just love to spend some time with more marine mammals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't done enough of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I just have a really healthy respect for big predators as well. I think that's aside from the Disneyland, wouldn't it be amazing to be really close to these things? For me, it's more just like, wow, what big teeth you've got. Wow, how highly adapted you are. Oh, that's a keen sense of smell. You're a long way away and you've just turned your head to look at me, you know. Yeah. For me, I'm in awe of all these adaptations. It's not something that I want to push the animal to explore my lack of adaptations more if I can help it.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your living with nature with me.
No worries.
It's been fantastic, and I'm looking forward to finishing the story that we're busy working on, which everyone will be able to read in the next volume of Modern Huntsman, which is coming out in the coming months. Yeah. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, maybe there'll be some behind-the-scenes Byron surf skills appearing on my Instagram soon.
No, please, no. Next time, I need more time to get my skill set up.
We'll sort it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.